Hello and welcome to Asia TV, Business Talk with Taha. Today I have Mrs. Susan Griffith-Jones in the studio, who is born and educated in the UK. Although initially her path would have seemed to have pointed to a career and life in England, by force of destiny, she has been involved with Eastern world for more than a quarter of a century and has lived in both Nepal and India for the last 17 years. I welcome Susan to the studio today. Thank you very much for coming in, Susan.
Thank you, Taha, for inviting me on your show today.
Susan, so we talk a lot about business on this show. I know for a fact that you have been involved with the cultural side of things a lot, and wherein you started developing a business angle to it. I will try and ask you how and why you've done so. So basically, if you could tell us something about yourself as a British woman who quit everything and left your family in UK and went to India.
Well, it's not exactly as if I quit everything, because I hadn't started anything in the first place.
Okay.
I was only 18 years old when I decided to go travel the world. And that was a decision I made when I dropped a grade in my A-levels and had to rethink about taking up my place at Cambridge University.
Okay.
And they required straight A's for my classics course.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I dropped the grade in my Latin, which was absolutely essential for me to take up that course.
Okay.
I could have taken up a place at another university, but it really made me stop and think about my life and about what I was doing and where I was going. And it sounds a bit odd, but in a second I saw my life flash before me.
Okay.
And I took a good look at it and I said, no, I don't want to live like that.
Okay.
So it was really a hard decision actually to make, because I had been grooved to follow this route and had gone through a very expensive education in an all-girls boarding school.
Okay.
So there was kind of a pressure on me to continue to go on into further education and to also take up a good career in London or elsewhere. When I made this decision, I felt such a joy in my heart. It was as if I'd really discovered what my life was going to be about, although I didn't know exactly what that was in that moment. In fact, when people ask me, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And how are you going to live? The answers to all those questions were, I don't know, and I don't know, but I just know that this is what I have to do. So I bought myself a rucksack and a pair of good hiking shoes, and I bought a ticket from Victoria Station on the bus to Calais, and I decided that the only thing that I would listen to would be my heart, and I would go left and right every day as my heart dictated, and that somehow the force of my destiny would blow me to where I needed to go. It sounds very whimsical and rather, what's the word for it? A little bit irresponsible in a sense, but I was 18 years old, and so really I had absolutely nothing to lose and a lot to gain. I ended up traveling through Europe.
Okay.
And soon found myself in Italy, where I set up camp for the next couple of years.
Wow.
I learnt the language, and I took on a very interested role in studying the Renaissance artwork of the masters of Florence.
Okay.
I was actually based in Florence itself.
Okay.
And that's where I learnt about symbol.
Right.
And later in life, I have taken up symbol in my, especially in my photo pictures,
Okay.
which I've been displaying in exhibitions around the world.
Okay.
And I'm developing into workshops in which, with participants of the workshop, we actually make these photo collage art pieces.
Okay.
I've come to call it creative art therapy.
Right.
I'm going a little bit off the question here, because you asked me what led a British woman to quit everything and to go off and set sail and to find other pastures.
Yeah.
I think it's also because I had a real passion for the idea that there was a huge world out there, and I wanted to know this world that I lived in. I didn't have any particular place that I wanted to go. I landed up in Italy, first of all, and then from Italy, for example, I went to Russia. I lived in Moscow and St. Petersburg for the best part of 3 years.
Wow, that's a brave decision you made there.
Well, it was kind of fun, because at that time perestroika was going on there, and it was like, whoa, I really want to see what all this is about. I know it seemed dangerous, but for me, I've never thought of life as dangerous. It's always been like a challenge. And I've never been afraid to go to places and to set up camp not knowing anybody, and just to see what happens and fit in and find a way and move on as the wind blows.
So you like to discover things?
Yeah, and I also like to let things happen naturally and to unfold in a very organic way, rather than try to force things to occur.
Can I ask you here, what kind of impact did this have on your family? Because you said you went to an all-girls boarding school, very expensive education,
absolutely.
And all of a sudden you did not get into Cambridge and you decided to just leave.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there must have been an impact on your family. There must have been some kind of backlash from them.
Yeah, I think a lot of them were quite disappointed that I didn't follow the path that they had...
The traditional path.
The traditional path that they had envisaged for me, and I kind of jumped a bit out of their comfort zone. Okay, to take a gap year is one thing, but to just cut and run, so to speak, is another thing.
So can I say you were the rebellious child of the family then?
Yeah, I mean, people ask me this question. You rebelled, you ran away. I didn't run away, I ran towards. I didn't rebel, I was doing what my heart was. In fact, to be a rebel, I would have gone on the route that had been prescribed for me, because that would have been rebellious to what my heart was dictating. What my heart was dictating was go discover the world, be free, go where the wind flows, and just discover and find out what you're interested in. Actually, at the age of 18, we don't know what we really love or what our passion is. We have an idea, we like this or we like that, but we're not necessarily yet integrated with our talent or our potential, which needs to unfold, I think, in its own time. It's like a young child. You can't force them to read age 4 years old. They might start at age 8. It's just the way each individual operates.
So your DNA was just different than your family?
Kind of, yeah. And but you know, in later years, they have given me so much support and assistance in many different respects, in just helping me to continue the road that I chose to walk on.
Just to tell our audience here, you know, leaving a dream like leaving Cambridge and going somewhere else, that's a huge decision to make. How did you feel at that time? You know, you're leaving Cambridge at one side and you're going out to this world where you know nothing about. How did you feel at that time? What was going on in your mind at that time?
My heart was absolutely bursting with joy. I was so excited that I now had the space. I'd created the space to really discover who I was. I think going through a traditional education and background, it doesn't give you full scope to discover your full potential, because especially in the 1980s when I was in school, they didn't even have the kind of subjects that they have now in university, for example. They were more traditional subjects. And so I think there was a very narrow margin as to what I could have studied in university. And I chose a very classical path. I mean, the path of classics, Latin and Greek.
Wow. That's very interesting again. Yeah.
I think it was the nearest subject I could find, and this was subconscious at this stage because I didn't understand that I was really searching for the mythological, esoterical, and spiritual understanding. Or I wanted to know the truth. You asked me what was going on in my mind. I had a feeling that there was a truth out there that nothing to date had actually even touched although I had a Christian upbringing,
Yes.
and you know, at school we were going to church every weekend, and I often entered into intense debates with our priest, who was a lovely fellow.
Yes.
Nothing had really touched what I was understanding subconsciously to be a truth. I knew it was out there somewhere, and I knew that I could find it. And I'm not putting the Christian faith down here. It's not at all, because I respect and deeply appreciate the teachings of the Christian church.
Right.
Very much so. As I've come to understand spiritual teachings from the East,
Right.
it has actually brought me to understand the Christian teachings in a much deeper way as well.
Right.
But the way that it was thrown at us, sorry to say, in the manner that, you know, an adolescent mind would understand it, was not enough for me to perceive this was what I was really looking for.
Right. So, I mean, see, the British mindset is get into a job, have a family, or have a business, and get on with things.
Mm-hmm.
So you quit everything, and you know, you came over that mental block also. But do you think the community out there has learned something new from you? Do you think you're an example to the community now?
I think initially, in the early days when I used to come back from my travels, from living abroad, people used to find me a little bit frightening, because my way of looking at things was a little bit too open, a little bit spacious, a little bit too out of the comfort zone for them to deal with. Some people used to comment, blah, 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 you're always talking about your wonderful lifestyle and how you're going here and there and everything. And I'm like, well, that's just the way I live.
Right.
If we're going to have a conversation here and we're going to talk about our lives together, this is my contribution to the conversation.
So you were bringing the broad-mindedness into the conversation, which the British people were not able to accept at the time you were doing it.
It depends. I mean, some people were, and some people appreciated it. In fact, some people, oh, you're living the dream life. How did you manage to do this? How can you afford it? How do you questions like you're answering me. How did you cope with the mental block of getting over the standard way of living, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
But I think, largely speaking, I think a lot of things have changed in the UK in the last 20, 25 years.
Oh, yes,
and people are not as narrow-minded as they used to be in the 90s. Now people are very open-minded. And also this global community that we live in, with I mean, we are living in such a close-knit community in the sense that we can be in touch with everybody everywhere in seconds. We couldn't in the 90s still.
True.
The internet was there, but it was still a bit laborious and a bit slow, and not everybody had websites.
I mean, the internet has changed the world. We've had a lot of immigration into the UK. A lot of people have come from around the world. So yes, the mindset has definitely changed. So how did you land up with the idea of going into ancient teaching of the East?
This is not something you land up in, so to speak.
Okay.
It's all going to sound a bit mysterious, but when you are going to sit at the feet of a great master in the East, it doesn't normally end up being a usual process of getting there.
Okay.
And in fact, I've talked with my peers who had similar experiences to me, to how they ended up sitting at the feet of the masters in the East.
Okay.
In particular, I'll talk about my journey.
Yes.
Which was over a period of time. It's actually difficult to say when the first moment occurred.
Okay.
After I was living in Russia, I set up a business there actually, because the timing was such with perestroika that there was a lot of requirements for goods from Western Europe.
Okay.
And as soon as anybody saw I was a Western European, they were asking me for jeans, for cans of peas, for tomatoes in tins, for any kind of commodity that would fill the shelves.
Right.
I saw the first little convenience store open up there.
Okay.
I mean, it was really a transition point.
Okay.
So I set up a little trading company, and I focused in packaging machines for like bread and other industries that, you know, prior to that, everything had been laid out bare in the markets, and they were starting to package things, these nice vacuum packs. Yeah. And other things, some of these tinned vegetables and other items.
Right.
And then it happened that I got hitched, and I had I had 2 children,
Wow, okay.
And we came back to the UK and set up a little business here that was bringing in items from Russia to the West. So now
very interesting.
So now the tide has turned.
Yes.
I'll go very quickly through that because it was probably the turning point of my life, in the sense that I'd come round full circle. I was now back in the UK with a business in the UK. I was kind of slipping into old patterns.
Yes.
A pattern that had been grooved very deeply into me, and now I was almost running in the old pattern.
Right.
And life wasn't working.
Okay.
It wasn't working for me at all.
Okay.
And after my second child was born, and I had a business with my husband together in the UK, it was difficult to run. The money side was difficult. The kids, the pressure of having 2 children, and running a business, and everything else. And we ended up separating.
Oh, I'm sad to hear that.
And yeah, it was a very difficult moment, but it was a decision that had to be made, also because this was the time that the Eastern teachings were starting to kick in very clearly into my mind.
Okay.
You may ask how. When I closed the door to the business, I realized that I had slipped back into an old pattern which was not me.
Okay.
And I started writing.
Okay.
I promised to myself that I would now only do what I was passionate about, and that it was really close to my heart, and that I would stop trying to make money or live in the UK because it was the right thing to do if you had 2 children, and etc., etc. I was starting to slip into the should world, must do, ought to, rather than this is how I really feel with my heart.
Yeah.
And
so the path you wanted to follow suddenly came out, and this kind of brings me to the next question of how, a lot of Westerner would not feel comfortable to leave the Western world and venture out somewhere else, but you did it somehow. So again, what is it that motivated you to leave the Western world and move into the Eastern world?
Okay, well, this is kind of following on from the last question, actually, because as I started writing, initially I thought I'll write a book, a fiction, a story. And I started writing, with a notepad and a pen, not even on the computer.
Okay.
And as I started writing, I think I was about into page 20, page 25. And suddenly the ideas that were starting to sprawl down on the page were something almost completely incomprehensible to me.
Right.
I was starting to go into very deep philosophy and deep esoterical understanding. And I also myself could not quite understand what was happening to me.
Okay.
But I was so inspired beyond any measure that I had ever been inspired before in my life, and so I just continued writing.
Okay.
And having filled 4 volumes of these writing pads with understandings, things coming from my mind which I actually could not really perceive correctly at this point, I was in such awe, and I was overpowered in a sense that I was almost screaming out to the universe for a teacher who would guide me in understanding what was coming onto the pages of the blank pages of this book.
Okay.
I thought, in a sense, I was going crazy.
Okay.
It's like I had no rationale. This was in the 1990s. There was nothing in my environment that would support this knowledge
that you were writing.
That I was writing, and it was coming so naturally. It was coming straight from my heart, without any sense of being contrived or trying to think about it or copying from somewhere else. Just pouring out like this.
Right. Okay.
And so I was screaming out to the universe for guidance. What is going on with me? Am I going mad? Is this something rational? What is going on? I need somebody. I need somebody to guide me. I need somebody to guide me. So from the moment that I started, I started this writing, and these esoteric teachings, or this understanding, was pouring out onto the pages. I would say it took another couple of years before I actually landed in the East.
Okay.
During that process, there was the split with my ex, and it was actually that very, very night that as I was lying in bed, the moment had come, the split had occurred, I was lying in bed, one child on this side, one child on this side. Before I went to sleep that night, I stared up into the black space above the bed, and I just said with a sincerity that's probably never come out of my heart before, where do I go now and what do I do? And that night I had a dream. And in the morning I woke up still with like a mantra repeating on the edge of my tongue. Annapurna, Annapurna, Annapurna.
Very interesting.
I had no idea where this Annapurna place was. And in those days, because we didn't use the internet for absolutely everything like we do today, I went to the local library. And I look up Annapurna, and I find that it's in central Nepal. And it felt like almost coming home, because I had had this passion to go to Nepal for years, but somehow it had been blocked by this or that or another silly thing that just had not enabled me to go there yet. So I said, this time, no matter what, I am going. I had no idea what I was going to do, why I was going there, but I knew I had to go. I got straight onto the internet at the library that day. I put in the word Nepal, search, and up came, and I made out a short synopsis, a short bio of who I was and what I could do and languages I spoke and blah, blah, blah. And I sent it out to any and every website or email address that
was available.
That sounded semi-suitable.
Great, I understand. So
I sent it out there in that sense.
I mean, that is great. To do something like that in the 90s is absolutely phenomenal, because I don't think how many people knew about the internet and they could do something like that. But now, can you give us an insight of living in Nepal and India, and what challenges you faced there?
Again, we're kind of jumping ahead to the next issue, because it took me again a little bit longer to get there. So one email came back in particular from this send out of probably about 100, 150 emails. And it actually came from an NGO that operates in the Annapurna. From an NGO that is looking after a bunch of nuns who have a monastery high up in the Mustang area of Nepal, almost on the border with Tibet. And the fellow who was running this organization, I talked to him on the phone. He was operating out of Holland. And we talked on the phone, and he told me that he's making a film. I had just been living in Italy the year before, and I had a good connection with a producer in Cinecittà. And I went straight over to Cinecittà and asked the producer, would he be interested to fund a film like this? We found an angle. He said, yeah, technically it sounds feasible. He said, go to Nepal and do a pre-production research. So on the basis of this, I went to Nepal to do a pre-production research to make a film about a monastery in Mustang.
That's very interesting.
But through the course of events, I ended up staying there, bringing my kids over, and living in Kathmandu, in the area where the Tibetans live in Kathmandu, in Bodhanath. At which point I met my teacher, the one who I had been screaming out to the universe to help in the previous years to help me understand these teachings. Then it was a series of 6 years of studying very, very deeply with the masters, the various layers and levels of teachings that I would need to go through. And during that time, because it's not just a case of study all the time or meditate all the time or like this, it's also a process of integrating those teachings into something which is in the outside everyday world.
So basically in the practical world, in whatever you do in a day-to-day life.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I started making films.
Okay.
And first of all, I started making films about the monastery and about the teacher, and we do it together with, I do it together with other people associated with the monastery.
Mm-hmm.
I started my first book.
Okay.
I started my first photo collage art piece.
Okay.
I did an exhibition in Kathmandu. So this is all running along the side of studying with the master, and also now I'm starting to integrate and process. It was a way that I could also process my own understanding of the teachings into something which is tangible.
Sure.
Through my creative work.
Okay.
And this was during this time. Living in Nepal and India was absolutely no problem for me whatsoever.
Okay.
I have never had a problem integrating anywhere I go in the world, and I see humans as humans. I'm somebody who I think really relates to people on a heart-to-heart level. I'm never looking at the surface. I don't care what people wear, how they dress, how they look even. If I feel that the connection is good, or that there's something about the person where there's a connection, then that's enough for me.
Okay.
The surface is very superficial for me.
Right.
So living anywhere in the world is not a problem. Even the conditions, I just adapt. I mean, I've lived in the mountains. I've lived without running water or electricity, even in the mountains of Nepal and India, at times.
Okay.
I've traveled through Pakistan, through West China, down into Tibet. I stayed in Mount Kailash.
Okay.
I even stayed in a cave in Mount Kailash.
That's very interesting.
And so, you know, I've learned to survive. Where I go, I survive.
Yeah. So the saying "survival of the fittest" really
it's not-
fits on you.
It's not a problem just to adapt, and we humans are actually very adaptable.
Yeah.
We know how to survive when we have to.
Sure.
And basically we need food, water, and a shelter to sleep under at the very worst of times.
Yes, yes.
Or that's
so you're one of the first people, to be honest, who's told me that they've never faced a problem in a place like India, Nepal, Pakistan, or wherever they went in the developing world or the third world countries. And it is very heartening to, you know, listen to someone like yourself who's traveled the whole world and still thinks that, you know, there was nothing wrong in these countries. And you should be an advocate for the West, for the Eastern world. And I'm sure through your teachings, you will advocate that in the future. So could you tell me something about your journey into setting up the Pyramid Key?
Yeah, pyramidkey.com is my website.
Okay.
And it's a platform on which I've been able to assemble all my various pieces of work.
Okay.
My books, my films, my newspaper articles, and magazine articles, my blogs, my photographs. I'm an avid photographer.
That's
my photo collage artwork, my events and exhibitions and whatever's going on. So it's like my platform with which I can reach out to the world and to showcase what I've done and what I'm planning to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for our audience, can you tell us how many books you've written, how many films you have produced, and what your films are about? Is it documentaries? Is it short films about certain projects? Something like that?
Well, my books are, I've actually published 4 books to date.
Wow, that's really good.
And I've got 2 books which are in the pipeline.
Okay.
One is almost almost at publishing standard, and the other is kind of in embryonic state.
Okay.
Well, starting to write it.
Okay.
Honestly speaking, it's getting the time to do these things now because I'm traveling so much and I'm doing so many conferences and international events that I really need a period of a month or 6 weeks to focus in, you know, and to gather the creativity, the creative mindset. Because when I'm out and about and I'm running here and there are too many other things to think about. I actually need to kind of close myself up in my house, in my lovely house in the Kulu Manali Valley in Himachal Pradesh in India, where I live. And I mean, that's the house on this planet that I actually own.
That's very interesting.
It's not that it's not that I'm physically there much of the time, but it's where my stuff is and where I do live. So I run there and stay there to do my creative work. It's really such an inspiring environment and so clean. The air is wonderful. The water is fantastic. The elements are very, very balanced in this part of the Himalayas. I absolutely love it.
That's very interesting.
And I hate it when I have to leave, but then I know I'm going out, and I really enjoy it when I'm gone and doing all these wonderful things around the world.
Sure.
But to stay there is like a dream. It's a Garden of Eden. It really is.
So you're the perfect person to market India and Kulu Manali that way.
Yeah. I've lived in other parts of India as well. I was in Mussoorie in the foothills near Dehradun.
Yeah.
And then obviously I mentioned I was in Kathmandu also for 6 years.
Yes. Mussoorie is a beautiful part of India.
It is.
Yes, it is.
But it's more in the foothills. I like Mussoorie because it's on the top of a mountain, so you've got that great element of space.
Sure.
Now we've moved into a valley, so it's a kind of a different environment. It's a different dynamic.
That's very nice. So tell me more about your future projects then. What is it what is it that you have in the pipeline, and what is it that you want to do now?
Well, I'll come on to my film work also, because I've got quite a few films in the pipeline as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've made several films that I term as artistic creative documentaries.
Okay.
They're in the sense that they're not like a documentary that says, here we are now in such and such a place and these people are da-da-da-da-da. It's a little bit more opaque, but a little more subtle, and embedding the teachings within the dialogue.
Okay.
And for example, the first film I made on my own, which is what I term my film, rather than the films that I did with other people, a film called The Circle of Immortality, which is about the visuals are showing life at different levels of Nepal, as in the lowlands, the middle lands, and the high Himalayas.
Right.
And here I actually structure the film on a pyramid.
Okay.
So you may ask, how do you structure a film on a pyramid? Well, I kind of break up the shape. This is where I come back to the symbol that I studied so many years ago, or I got interested in Italy.
Right.
The using sacred geometry and using symbol in my work.
Okay.
So I actually embed the film in a structure that is in the shape of a pyramid, in terms of music, in terms of timing, in terms of visual, in terms of narrative.
Okay.
So that actually, in the end, if I were to show you the shape, you would say, yes, it is a pyramid.
Right. Okay.
I'm just at the moment making a film about the River Ganges.
Okay.
This was something I promised to myself when I moved from Nepal to India, that I would not leave India until I had traveled the whole of the river Ganges from source to mouth.
To mouth, okay. And have you done so yet, or are you still in the process?
I'm in the process, but I've reached West Bengal.
Oh, that's, well, nearly there to the mouth.
I'm quite close to Kolkata. Right. I don't know if this means I'll be leaving India soon, or whether I'm so embedded in India now that I'll never
leave India.
I'll never leave India. Okay. But I've been filming the whole way from source to West Bengal.
Okay. That's very interesting.
And time again I go back to different sites on the river to meet new people who come up, to explore different aspects that come up. Right. For example, in the Bihar region, I've just been into the issue with the dolphins. Okay. And now we've reached the Farakka barrage. We're into the issues of shipping.
Oh, I see. Okay.
As the Indian government has just declared that they're going to open up the waterways as highways and take the cargoes off the train.
Yes, into the
I mean, you can see both ways that there's a point. Yep. Obviously, the trains are very overloaded with cargo, but at the same time, the big ships would be going through the deeper parts of the water, and that's where the dolphins live. The dolphins are endangered. Sure. They're one of the in fact, they say they are the oldest cetacean mammal on Earth. Right. They found fossils 50 million years old in Kashmir. Yeah. And these are really a very, very old creature. They're extinct in China now. Wow. So having done an interview with a fellow at the University of Patna, he told me that the Chinese have lost all their dolphins in the Yangtze River, probably due to shipping. And this is something that India really needs to learn from.
From China.
So this is just an example. For example, in Kanpur, sorry to say, I have had to look at the heavy industrial pollution in the river there. And further up, especially in the mountainous regions, very much the spiritual aspect in the ashrams and that are dotted all the way from source down to Haridwar. I mean, I know they come further along, but especially in the mountains, you have so many ashrams.
Yes, you do.
All the way from Gaumukh down to Haridwar. So it's been a really interesting journey, and I filmed all the way, and I plan to make a book alongside that as well.
Okay.
I'm also making a film in Bosnia at the moment.
Very interesting, okay.
Yeah, I was invited by the fellow Sam Osmanagic, who discovered the Bosnian pyramids near Sarajevo, in a valley called Visoko.
Okay.
So quite a controversial subject. A lot of academics are not agreeing that these pyramids actually exist, but I've been there, I've seen them,
filmed them?
I've filmed them. I've been into the tunnels. So, you know, I'm working on that project. Again, this will be of a very creative, artistic nature.
Okay.
But I think at the moment I'm developing my creative art therapy in a way that I hadn't envisaged. Because as I go out there in the world and I show my photo collage art, let me just explain to you what photo collage art is.
Okay.
It's a term that I came up with myself.
Okay.
When I started, I had so many photos because I love taking pictures everywhere I go. Can you imagine? I've got tens of thousands of photos
pictures, I'm sure,
of different places around the planet.
Right.
And I'm thinking, this is such a waste to have all these beautiful pictures and do nothing with them.
Right.
So piece by piece, I've started to theme them and to put together large mosaic of hundreds of photographs, not just sort of rectangular shape, but sometimes cut and fitting other shapes.
Correct.
And according to the mandalas and the geometric, sacred geometry, and also some knowledge that I've learned through the high tantric methods of the Tibetan masters.
Right.
So I've created shapes which expose universal truth within them. Again, like I do in my films, I embed the shape into the film, I embed the shape into my photo collage art pieces.
Okay, okay. And you give it shapes.
Yeah, a year ago, actually, it's a little more now, it was November 2016, I did an exhibition at the Nehru Centre here in London. They kindly gave me the space.
Okay.
And I showed my photo collage art during that time there.
Okay.
And a lot of the comments that came back to me, it was a little bit of a test ground for me.
Right.
A lot of the comments that came back were, it's absolutely mesmerizing.
Right.
We don't quite understand what it means, but it's mesmerizing. And that's enough for me to have really taken it a step further.
Sure.
And people are now asking me, can we make these ourselves?
Right.
How do we do this? So my husband and I, my present husband, who I married 15 years ago, and sorry, 13 years ago, seems younger, 13 years ago, we've been going around to various people who've invited us. We were in Vietnam, for example, in November. We were in Bangalore in October. And we've been making art pieces with people according to what they may need or what they are confronting or what they request. And we might do it over a weekend or in 4 days. We've done it with kids, we've done it with adults, we've done it with families. We've done it in different kinds of venues, also with other people there who want to sing songs and do other things as well. You know, in different settings. We've created this creative art therapy, which is a way to break from what you were talking about, this normal track of life, and just to expand the mind into something completely different.
Break the monotony.
Yeah, and to go deeper into yourself and really say, okay, I'm just going to have this free space on which I can create, and it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. You know, we always say experiment. If it doesn't work out, start again, throw it away and start again. It doesn't matter. That's the beauty with creativity. There's nothing right and wrong. And it may look awful at the end, but it's not wrong, you know, it's still...
I mean, that's why creative people are the way they are. They will never fit into this corporate culture or into the managements of the companies.
There are no boxes,
that. I'm sure our audience would love to listen to you more, but time is of essence and it's coming to an end. So
Yeah.
I'll have to say thank you very much for coming in again. Thank you for taking time out because I know you're traveling very soon. And I will hopefully have you back once your new project takes on
Thank you.
in the UK.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.